Hello, and welcome to episode 3 of KickStart a crowdfunding podcast. I'm your host, Andrew McDonald. On our latest episode, I have the pleasure to interview creator Andy Belanger on his Kickstarter project, Mother Trucker. You can find a link to his Kickstarter in the description for the podcast you're listening to right now. Mother Trucker is an independent comic book written and drawn by his alter ego, the animal Bob Anger, pro wrestling wildman. Andy himself has worked as an artist, creator, animator, and storyboard artist for a long time in the entertainment industry. Honestly, I really enjoyed my conversation with Andy, talking about his influences, his background, his love of superheroes and comics, learning about how he fell in love with pro wrestling at a young age, and now to the fact that as an adult, he's decided to lace up the boots himself. Andy comes at this project from every angle. He has it covered. Mother Trucker itself, we get to see the first 8 pages on his Kickstarter page. It looks like a lot of fun, and it's shaping up to be an interesting 6 issues from what he's told me. The book is a love letter to the Saturday morning cartoon world building with a truckload of edge and heart. It's big dudes, big trucks, big business brought to heel by one bad mother trucker. So let's get started on the interview and kickstart my sci-fi comic about a space trucking, ass stomping wrestling goddess. Let's have you introduce yourself.
Hello, I'm Andy Belanger. I also go by Animal Bob Anger when I'm a pro wrestler in Montreal. And I'm my trade is I'm a comic book creator for the last 17 years professionally, but I've been making comics my whole life. And I just released a Kickstarter this week on Monday for a comic called Mother Trucker, which is sort of like my big 4 or 5 year baby that merges my wrestling life with my comic book life.
Cool. And also congratulations, because already funded.
Oh yeah, we got we were funded in 3 hours. It was
crazy.
super crazy. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I mean, you guys are actually double funded now, as I see of this. So
yeah, we're almost at 18. We're at 17 something as of today. So that's pretty wild. It's pretty cool. Hopefully, in the next month we can keep pushing, and I've got a whole bunch of stretch goals that are going to be really cool. So
that is cool. So, what can you tell us about the story?
Mother Trucker is she's a space trucker, ass stomping wrestle goddess who travels through the galaxy looking for her long lost kid and looking to become the champion of truck off, which is like the Wrestlemania of the Starways. So in my world, the number one form of entertainment is trucking and wrestling combined. Kind of like you saw like on there was like that one TV show with the ice truckers.
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
So if you take wrestling and ice truckers and put them in space, that's like what Mother Trucker is. And so let's say you have the contract for Walmart. The contracts are actual like belts.
That's fantastic.
Right? And if you're trucking for Walmart and I want your contract and I'm another trucker, and all truckers are like these big, Hulk looking wrestlers. Uh-huh. I ride up on you, challenge you, and the back of our trucks transform into rings. And we do get out. In the second the trucks transform, people on the space highways like fly in to watch the match. These announcers show up and everything gets like televised. So and Truck Off is sort of like an annual event where all the belts are up for grabs and everyone is in a truck race around the rings of Saturn while all the trucks are in ring form and they all wrestle to become the champions of the biggest contracts. So, and if I win, I get your contract and your truck, so you can't chase me immediately after to challenge me.
That's great.
So in my universe, there's these 2 champions, Ricky Heat, who's like a Ric Flair type, and Phil Injection, who's the super champion, who's like my Shawn Michaels. And the Vince McMahon of my universe can't control them, so he creates Mother Trucker, who is going to be like, she's like this sort of like crazy 90s style lady wrestler who shows up and she's going to like take over the world, and she finds out there's a big accident. So she's rebuilt to become this wrestler, and she slowly starts figuring out that she had a kid, and she's trying to find that kid at the same time as she's trying to get her truck back and become like the biggest wrestler in the galaxy.
Gotcha. So this the first couple pages that you have in your Kickstarter, I guess, is kind of a bit of a prelude to a prologue.
Yeah, that's the first. That's sort of like the hook. That's the first 8 pages to the comic. It's 36 pages. We're gonna do six stories. They're kind of self-contained. Every comic is gonna have like a big match in it, and it all leads to a bigger story. And by the end, it'll be like 180 pages for the first book. And I actually wrote the second part. I guess you would say 7 to 12. I wrote actually before the first part. So far I have 12 books like ready to rock in the next 2 years.
Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So like I knew what you had on the site, but I didn't know any of this other stuff with like they're fighting for like contracts to be truckers for these big companies. Like this is ridiculous. That's wild. That's actually a really cool idea now that I'm hearing about this.
Oh, cool. Thank you. Yeah.
Because, we've had wrestling comics in the past where it's just like it's wrestling as a comic book. And, we go into a little bit of backstory here and there. And you know this better than most because you worked on one of the recent WWE comics.
Yeah.
But that's crazy. This is like really cool. Like how did you come up with this idea? What inspired you to write this story like about the trucking industry mixed with
I've always
wrestling?
really been obsessed with like Japanese Dectora. I don't know if you've ever seen that, but they like super soup up their trucks. And it's
I have seen that.
Thing where they have lights and they look like Transformers. And I wanted to combine that with pro wrestling. And I've always been obsessed with somehow putting wrestling in space. So like even like, so I'm a pro wrestler for IWS in Montreal, and we're on the Fight Network, and we're on RDS and RDS2. And I've always like dreamed of throwing a show that would have lasers, like big lasers and just like pure space wrestling. So I've always had this idea for that thing, but I'm also obsessed. I grew up in the 80s, so like I was a kid in the 80s. So G.I. Joe, Transformers, that was all around when I was like 6, 7, 8 years old. So I mean that stuff is so ingrained in me. So this is in a lot of ways like my He-Man. So I mean I was trying to combine He-Man, Transformers with wrestling, and I knew about wanting to make the comic before I became a wrestler. And my friend Andrew Stott, who wrote all my WWE comics, was my trainer. He goes by Shane Hawk, and he was kind of like a star on Chikara.
Okay.
And so he was my trainer in IWS, and they started the school, and I was one of the first students. And I did it as one of those things, like an actor will take a job so that they understand how to like be a sous chef or something for a role. I kind of like wanted to do it like that. But then after my second practice match, I was hooked. And I think the first match as a wrestler where you come out to like, 500 to 1,000 people, that adrenaline rush, is so insane. Like that's its own art form.
That's clearly how they get you.
Yeah. And like, really, I didn't see any difference between the comic book work I was doing and the wrestling. Wrestling is based on the hero's journey. That's how you remember your match, right? There's like a shine where the hero goes over, then there's a cutoff, and then the heat where the bad guy kicks the guy's ass and kills him. And then they come back with like a Hulk Hogan comeback, and then it leads to a few falsies and then a big finish. Yeah. It was the same kind of storytelling that we're doing in comics. You all sort of like have this hero's journey, and it's like, how do I play with it along the way to make it an interesting story? So it really felt like comic books and wrestling for me were the same thing. And having like inside knowledge of what it's like to be in a match, to get kicked in the face, to like actually be in the scenario. Yeah. I felt like, I'm going to be really, I knew that I was going to be really good for my sequences that have wrestling in it. So,
makes sense.
I've just always wanted to put those things together. And that's how it kind of like came about. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, I've never quite understood how, like, we live in a day and age where a Marvel movie comes out and it's pretty much expected. Okay, this is gonna be $1 billion movie. Like, it's gonna make $1 billion easy. But like, growing up, also in the 80s, pro wrestling to me has always felt like I'm watching a comic book live. There are guys out there like The Undertaker. Well, he's gonna do spooky, supernatural shit. He's going to teleport around the ring. He's gonna call down lightning. And every couple of years, he might even die and then come back from the dead to fight some more. Like, this has always been the case. These guys wear spandex, go out there, do superhuman things. and recover and come back. And
I find
wrestling has never been the same.
Yeah, I find that when people try to do wrestling comics, they're trying to make comics about what it's really like to be a wrestler. And it's kind of like, you don't need to do that.
Yeah.
Like, it's not about that. You know, it's you're already doing it by making superhero comics. You're already making it. So for me, it wasn't about trying to like make it about the drama in a locker room. For me, it was like, I want to make this thing like He-Man. Like, I want to make it gigantic. I want to put it in space. I'm in love with Charlotte Flair. Like, she's just like, just freaking awesome, man. Like, she's just awesome. I mean, Ric Flair is obviously awesome too.
Yeah.
I think like when I watch her matches, even I'm just like, as a wrestler, I'm like, wow, she's a great wrestler.
Because that was going to be something I was going to ask you. Like, how did you decide you wanted to do this about a female wrestler as opposed to...
It was originally about the other main character that's going to come in the second book, which is Big Rig Riggins, who's like my Hulk Hogan, Macho Man kind of like
I very much got that from
as a fall from grace
yeah.
and comes back and he's trying to like reconnect with his daughter. And then I was like, oh, like I know that I have a character that I want to work on that's the wife called Mother Trucker, and it's such a great name. Like, and then I was just watching. Well, I was in Italy all of 2019 and watching. I wouldn't miss like any match that Charlotte had, and I was just like, man, like I think the book should be about her because it's kind of cool. Because like here you have a wrestler and a woman, and I think if you put her in the men's league, she would just like crush.
Oh, yeah,
she would crush like against all the guys. Like, so I'm kind of like, I was like, that's who I think should be the hero of the story. And then the second book, I'll add in the Big Rig part that I wrote originally. But Charlotte Flair was like a big influence for Mother Trucker, big time. Yeah.
So I was going to ask you that. So you may have already answered the question. I was going to ask you later, but who's your favorite female wrestler? So I'm assuming
Charlotte by far. She's one of my favorite wrestlers of all time. Like she's just freaking awesome.
No, she's fantastic. Yeah. I mean, I think as long as she stays healthy, she's going to eclipse her father easy one day. It's just.
I think so. I think
my favorite currently right now in terms of female wrestlers is probably still Asuka, but Charlotte would be a close second.
Asuka's so cool.
Everything she does, I enjoy so much, whether it's being menacing or silly.
Oh, she's so cool. Yeah. And she's like, if she wants to be like hardcore, pure wrestling, easy. Yeah. I prefer when Asuka's like hardcore pro wrestling because she's freaking awesome. But like Charlotte and Rhea Ripley's match at WrestleMania was my favorite match. Mm-hmm. Like I think it hands down when it comes to wrestling, that was the best.
Yeah, it was just pure.
Undertaker's like movie match was dope as hell. But,
I enjoyed that. Yeah.
As far as a wrestling match, they had the best wrestling match, and it was at a time when no one knew what to do without a crowd. Mm-hmm. And it seemed like you didn't need a crowd for that match. Yeah,
it's kind of amazing. I kind of didn't know if wrestling would go more the way of those Undertaker matches during this last year because it felt like, okay, well, this worked really well. It covers for the lack of a crowd. It makes it a more cinematic story experience. And I guess, but that costs money and it takes time and it's probably not in their wheelhouse, truth be told, in some cases. But I mean, now they have the Thunderdome.
Over Bray Wyatt's videos because they were so like ultra surreal, but I actually didn't like them as much. I didn't really like them. I liked Undertaker's, but his were just, they were too bananas for me for some reason. And I love bananas, but it was like,
it was a little out there.
It felt, for me, it felt like college, first year college filmmaking.
Very experimental filmmaking. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
I get that.
Too much. Like it's like one of those far out, like art students.
Yep.
Like I did film in college. So we made videos like Bray's video, like in college. So when I saw his, I was like, oh, like there should be some wrestling in here, like somewhere.
Yeah, there wasn't much.
And then he did the second one with the monster among men, and it was so dark you couldn't see anything they were doing. And I was like, at least like bring some like lighting here, dudes. Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, it's either let Matt Hardy plan this or don't do it sometimes.
Yeah, exactly. Like Undertaker's was great. It was like good.
That was like a good B action movie from the 80s.
Yeah, that was perfect.
Doing his thing.
And we finally got to hear Undertaker like trash talk.
Yeah.
you know what I mean? You can never really hear him trash talking a match, but like you could hear him trash talking that whole time. It was really
And then he buried AJ Styles alive, and AJ recovered a couple days later. So it was okay.
Yeah, of course. That's comics.
It's comic books, exactly. It's like somebody dug him off panel, and they got him. He was fine.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah.
I think that just happened to Norman Osborn last month in Spider-Man, but whatever.
Yeah, exactly. They're back right away.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So with the project now being already successfully funded, what do you say to people who are still on the fence about donating or thinking, I don't have to donate, I can donate somewhere else. I can wait till it releases and find it later?
Well, yeah, it's really like the sky's the limit, because the more that comes in, the more stuff I can do. So I've been professional for 20 years, and the artists I have lined up to do posters and prints and covers, like at 25, it unlocks another cover. By like some big artists, and I know everyone in the business. So, I mean, the more money that comes in, the more goes into the book. But also, I get to like focus now. This is my career,
cool,
right? Like actually, like with this one already, I have enough for issue 2 to make issue 2. Nice. So that was sort of my plan with this one, was to do issue 1, because I had raised enough money to do all the artwork for issue 1 and finish the first book. On my own, and that takes time. That's like months and months of like, I had to save really hardcore to take 3 months, right, where I didn't get paid, and all I did was work on Mother Trucker and the Kickstarter, right? And no, I'm not getting paid in that time, right? So what's cool is this thing has paid enough that I can do the second one, but with a couple extra months, that just gives me more time to put into the next book. So this is really, the more money that comes in, it just pays for me to do the second one.
Makes sense. Okay.
Yeah.
So you said you've been working in comics now about what, over 20 years?
Yeah.
And I mean, you've done a lot of other things.
Yeah, I think my first published comic was with Wildstorm, and it was Friday the 13th when I was 28.
Okay.
Yeah. So it's been 17 years, I think, since I was 25, I think, my first published comic book. And I knew I wanted to do it like from when I was a kid, like Wayne Gretzky style. Like I was a little kid, and it was like all I wanted to do was be a comic book artist my whole life. I was obsessed with wrestling my whole life. But when I lived in Toronto, they didn't have a lot of wrestling indie shows. So when I moved to Montreal, there's like 10, 12 federations in Montreal alone. So I started going to wrestling shows, and that's where I started doing like T-shirts and posters for like local wrestlers, because going out with your buddies to a wrestling, like indie wrestling show, and having a few beers and yelling at wrestlers was like the most fun ever. And I hadn't done it in my 20s because it just wasn't around in Toronto that I could see. But here it was so big. And then when I started actually wrestling myself, I'm just obsessed with it. And it's really just like, it feels like I'm doing like an extension of my comic book stuff. Cool. So, I mean, yeah, this is a little bit of a different scenario, because it's not just me doing a comic. It's like almost like, this is like a weird life thing that I do, which is a combination of my wrestling comics. And we want to take this thing to, we want to take this thing like He-Man style. I talked to some video game guys yesterday. Nice. I talked to a few movie people already. So we'll see what happens. It could be crazy. A Mother Trucker cartoon would be wild, action
Mother Trucker on Netflix this fall.
Yeah. So that's what I would love to do. It would be really fun, and get to draw all my wrestling buddies in my comics and all that stuff. It's gonna be really cool.
That's really sweet.
And the nice thing is that I'm doing this without publishers.
Yeah, I mean,
I don't have to get the green light from someone. So when you work at comic books, we're all freelance, and if I know that this guy is the boss of this company, I have to make samples and comics that I think he likes to get work.
Yep.
Right. But what if I don't think his taste is cool?
Yeah.
Like, I don't like your taste. I don't think what you think is cool is cool. So, I'm going to get the chance to make what I think is cool.
Yeah.
And the books that this is kind of like, in a lot of ways, I make books for my 13-year-old self. So this is like 13-year-old Andy who, loved like when Image broke, and all of like the first time I started really reading all those heavy metal magazines and all that stuff. That's what Mother Trucker is. It's like that place where I really fell in love with comic books.
That's cool.
That's the stuff I want to make.
Makes sense. Yeah, I mean, I've been wanting to talk to guys who are doing projects like this on Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because, I mean, I feel like, this year aside, which I think is drastically changed the landscape for comics as a whole in 2020, just
humongous
because of COVID and shipping and publishing and all that stuff. I mean, it feels like no one has to deal with a big publisher anymore. Like, you can love Marvel and you can love DC, you can love Image, you can love Dark Horse, you can love Valiant, you can love all these guys and all their characters. But if you're not interested in doing work for hire where you write the Hulk, but the Hulk will never be yours. Yeah. You go somewhere, you make a name for yourself for a year or two if you can get in, or you work on something on your own and you put it up on a Kickstarter and you work on marketing so people know about it. And hopefully it works out because, this is the new indie landscape. I feel like just make your own book, publish it online, publish it to Comixology or somewhere that'll take it. And then, keep going, keep rolling.
Yeah, my studio in particular, we've always been really into self-publishing and making books ourselves. And it just I think it's what we all want to do here.
Yeah.
We don't want to work for big publishers anymore. We all want to make our own product and our own comics and our own stuff and build from there because it is more satisfying.
Yeah.
And I think you do better work. I would say that the work I'm doing on Mother Trucker is my best work by far. And if I'm trying to fit into someone's box, if they come to me and they're like, okay, we want you to draw this, and you look at the price tag on, what you're going to be paid for that job, a lot of times you're like, I got to do it and try and fit myself in there. Well, it's 20 years of me trying to fit myself into someone else's box when I know that there's I have Mother Trucker, it's there. And if I did it, people are going to see really what I'm capable of.
They'll really see the real you.
Yeah. And I mean, I've been on this forever, and all of my friends and my wife and everyone's like, you got to stop trying to do that stuff and do this thing that you keep talking about. So some stuff happened to me early in COVID where I made a lot of money doing animation for behavior. Video game companies. And then I sold Southern Cross, my Image series, to NBC Universal to be an anime in Japan. So those two things kind of that was my year, and it happened very quickly. And my wife was like, and I was doing Marvel samples and DC samples and sending them in twice a month. And my wife's like, why are you bothering?
Time.
Yeah, it's time for your Mother Trucker story. It's time to do this. You're writing it all the time. Every time you do a drawing for it, it's the really cool, and all your friends like it. So yeah, it's time to do this thing that you've always talked about and wanted to do. And we kind of so I just started a few pages, and then right away, in the first 3 pages, I was like, yeah, this is easily my best work.
This is what I got to do.
It's coming out. The love is coming out in those pages. And then my colorist, Tato Caballero, when he got on it, he worked with me at Heavy Metal Magazine. We did a few comics at Heavy Metal Magazine, and I thought it was my best work, but then he colors it. And in comic books, there's a funny thing. If Dave Stewart colors one of your comic books, the guy who colors Hellboy, you're gonna look like $1 bajillion, immediately. No matter how you draw, if he colors you, you're gonna look amazing. It felt like that. It was every time I gave a page to Tato, it was just coming back even crazy better.
That's great.
And fit the story so well. So it's really exciting to see that stuff go down.
That's cool. Because that says a lot about the industry and just the work as a whole. Because you've worked on plenty of big things. You sold, like you said, something that's going to be a potential anime. Southern Cross. You worked on Vampirella. You've worked with Grant Morrison. You've done stuff for the WWE and Swamp Thing and Far Cry. These are no small franchises in any way, shape, or form. Most people would think they would die happy to be working on this with this person or for this company. And, it says a lot. Those are all great. But if I can make something that's mine and really give it to people.
Yeah, this is one of those moments where it's one of those jump off a cliff moments. Mm-hmm. This is I'm putting all the chips on myself.
Yeah.
I'm leaving it myself. I'm putting all the chips on myself. And I think the response was there on Monday.
Yeah. To have it, reciprocated like that on Kickstarter, 3 hours, this is the thing I'm now doing. And everything else is just gravy on the side. It's extra, or poutine. I don't know. Is that maybe?
Yeah, we have poutine up here. You know what's funny is I'm I would say now I'm from Montreal. I'm not leaving Montreal ever. Uh-huh. And except this is my home, and poutine is gigantic here, and I don't eat it.
That's fair.
My
I mean, come
wife
on.
loves it. She's crazy about it, but like I don't need a lot of poutine.
You know, there's got to be. There's always one thing. It's like, all right, I'm totally you, except for
Yeah,
no.
but if you came here, I would take you for poutine that would freak you out. I like freak you out. It's like cake. They got like everything in it. It's like wait, poutine with like a chicken and a steak in there, or like and like as much cheese as you can handle, and yeah, they have every kind of poutine up here.
I'll have to make sure. If I'm ever in Montreal,
I live
first thing.
I live maybe 10 units down from probably the best bagel shop in the world.
You know, I've heard this. This went around like last year. Montreal bagels are apparently better than any other bagel.
So there's Fairmount bagels and St. Viateur bagels, and I live down the street from like Fairmount bagels, which I think are better than St. Viateur bagels. And the place never closes. There is not one day it closes. The fire that they have for the bagels is going nonstop all year.
And best bagels in the world.
Wood. Like there's just wood going into this thing like nonstop. It never stops. And like those bagels are intense. They're really good.
Okay.
I have to take breaks.
I need to make a real big list of things that if I find myself in Montreal, this is where I have to go to get bagels.
A lot of stuff. Montreal's a very, very cool city.
And apparently it's full of wrestling, which, you know, I always thought like Canada
full of wrestling,
was like supposedly the wrestling mecca of the world. Like everybody has wrestling, which is an interesting thing. But, you know, you always hear that Canada is the place for wrestling. Like that's where the best wrestlers in the world seem to always come out of.
Montreal is insane. It's like you know that like for years, like in hockey, it was like all the best hockey players were Canadian, right? It was just like if you were, you know, if someone was in hockey, they were Canadian or Russian for a while. It's kind of like that for wrestling. Montreal is they're just insane about it. There's lots of other great places, like Florida is really big, and I think California has some places that are really big. But
you know, you got Japan and Mexico and things like
Japan
that.
Is insane. That's my dream right now. So my trainer is a guy named Speedball Mike Bailey, and I would argue he's like probably one of the best wrestlers in Canada, if not like the best. Like him, Josh Alexander, they're like just amazing. And in COVID, he's kind of like stuck at home. So I get to have like one-on-one training sessions with him every single week. So my wrestling game is going like crazy because I get to work with this guy, and I get super kicked in the face a lot. But the guy's like Batman. It's like showing up and you're gonna train with Batman. Like he gets in the ring and does like 3 flips in the air, and you're just like, that's not human. Like. It's really crazy.
That's fantastic.
So I'm really lucky that way, but my dream is to go with those guys to Japan one day and wrestle in Japan. I could spend 3 months in Japan when it comes to wrestling, comic books, video games.
It's true.
You know, like the Studio Ghibli Museum. Just like, I don't know. I could spend a lot of time in Tokyo and Japan, and I haven't been. All my friends have been. I'm the only guy who hasn't gone yet.
Definitely the thing to do after the next successful Kickstarter. So, I mean, we're almost at 30 minutes, so to wrap up, a few other things. What is your first wrestling memory?
Whoa. I remember my dad getting a pay-per-view. What was it called? The Super Channel, maybe? It was the Super Channel, and we watched WrestleMania 3.
Okay. Who was on that card again? It was that Mr. T?
Hogan slammed Andre.
Okay.
Hogan slammed Andre. Macho Man and Ricky the Dragon Steamboat had arguably the greatest match in wrestling history. It was just like an insane time. But I remember, when was that? Early 86 or something?
Probably, yeah.
I would have been 7 or 8, and I remember it very vividly. And then from then on, like I just was drawing like Macho Man nonstop, and Ricky the Dragon nonstop. Obsessed with drawing those guys.
I feel like my first wrestling memory, for some reason, is probably the Ultimate Warrior puking after Papa Shango poison. For some reason, that sticks in my memory, and then also Adam Bomb for some reason. But that's. I
think the match I remember first. It wasn't at WrestleMania 3 because that was the fallout of this. Was the match where Macho Man smashed Ricky the Dragon Steamboat in the throat with the time bell. I remember that like super vividly when I was a kid, and just being like, "Oh my god, he smashed his throat in with the time bell from the top rope. He's gonna die!" Like really really thinking wrestling was real at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah. When I was a kid, it was like Ricky the Dragon and Macho Man. I was just obsessed with. Last year, I was at a comic convention in St. Louis, and I got to meet Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
Oh, that's great.
In the green room too, and Dave Bautista. I actually hung out for Dave Bautista in the green room and chatted. He's the same height as me, but like two. Like if you took one of me and taped it to the front, it's like that's how huge he was. Because I remember I was like, yeah, same height, but then he was just like gigantic.
Yeah, like everything else is not the same.
Yeah. And then Ricky the Dragon was in the back there, and and now he's got like pure white hair, and I got to talk to him, and it was really cool. I was really nervous actually, because you're back there and like you're in the green room and you're considered like talent or whatever, and like there's actors and stuff, and I'm just eating away, and then Ricky the Dragon walks in, and I was like, oh my god. Don't calm down, don't freak out, and
be cool.
No shame. So I went right up to him and started talking to him, but like for a second there I was like, oh my god, I have to go talk to Ricky the Dragon Steamboat.
As a legend.
The Dragon Steamboat.
I think I've talked to a wrestler too, because I used to go to Comic-Con a lot as media, but I know the one thing I tried one year, I think maybe the last year I went to Comic-Con recently, was I was wandering the floor and I saw Sergeant Slaughter behind the table, on a Comic-Con floor in New York.
I haven't met Sergeant Slaughter yet.
He's a good guy. I was chatting with him for a bit, but I could not get the crowd around me to start chanting USA. Try as I might. They just ignored me. So I was just like, wow.
Getting a G.I. Joe figure and having to cut that thing out of the box and mail it in to get my Sergeant Slaughter action figure from like in the mail. Like,
I feel like that's the biggest flub on those G.I. Joe movies. Like, you had Sergeant Slaughter. He's still alive. Bring him in. He could be in the background somewhere. He could be like the old general that used to run missions.
Just tell him what to do. Just to make him shoot a promo.
Exactly. Amazing. Just shoot a promo. Yeah. He could just show up with a gun and be like, "We got the maggots." Just anything. No, it's like, come on, man. The guy's still there. Throw him a bone for a minute.
Yeah.
All the kids from the '80s like me going crazy for it. Sergeant Slaughter was here. It's like that.
Lose my mind. They missed out on those movies. Those movies could have been a lot better.
They could have been better. I don't know. Yeah. You think a guy like The Rock would have put it in their ear, like, we got Sergeant Slaughter still. He works for us. We could bring him on set for a day.
One day, I want the chance to pitch Mother Trucker to The Rock.
Is he the perfect big rig for you?
No, he's not. Well, maybe he's not. I don't know if he's big rig, but like he could be big rig.
Could be big rig.
He could be big.
Although now that you say Dave Bautista, I kind of feel like Dave Bautista.
I feel like more like Dave Bautista is
big rig.
But I have a character called Officer Jabroni coming up, who's in my comic, he's The Rock.
I mean, that seems fair.
Yeah, he's like this super cop who quit being a trucker, and he just shows up and beats everyone up all the time. And he's like, everyone loves Officer Jabroni, right? And Officer Jabroni just shows up, and he's like he's always against the bad guy. Right, so he's always after Mother Trucker because he knows Mother Trucker's work, and Mother Trucker doesn't know she's working for the bad guy. But like Officer Jabroni, he knows what's up, so he's always on Mother Trucker's case, being a hard ass. So he's being a bit of a mentor character for her too. But
that's great.
Yeah, The Rock could definitely be Officer Jabroni.
Okay, yeah, save him for that. That sounds better.
Yeah. Oh, I think about The Rock all the time.
I mean, I think that's fair. Everyone should think about The Rock all the time.
Just make don't make The Rock the president. Like, make The Rock like the leader of the earth.
Yeah. So there you go.
When we have Rock doesn't want to be president. He wants to be like when aliens show up, Rock is.
We need a representative. Who can represent us? Trump? Biden? How about The Rock? Everyone loves The Rock. Yeah.
The Rock leads the planet. That's why.
Who is the leader? The Rock. Why? Because he's the most electrifying man on the sports entertainment.
Most electrifying man on the planet. Yeah. Oh, he's my favorite. Hard not to love The Rock.
It's really hard not to love The Rock. I mean, he clearly proves that, he was the best at what he did. Hulk Hogan tried in the 80s and, we got Mr. Mom and Suburban Commando or whatever, but, The Rock took it to The Rock revived the Fast and the Furious franchise. People
have not tapped Stone Cold enough for
fun. Oh, I agree completely.
He made that movie where he was being hunted on an island a few years ago, and I was like, God damn, this is a good movie.
Yeah,
like The Rock's awesome. Or sorry, Stone Cold's amazing.
Yeah. No,
So I
he
think
needs to get
if
more
I ever
play.
made like a movie, I would have to have I'd be like if they made Mother Trucker, I was like in the contract, I'd be like, whatever you do,
Steve
you
Austin,
have to
Steve
have
Williams has to be
Stone
somewhere in
Cold
this.
Steve Austin be a character.
Yeah, somewhere in this he has to show up.
Yeah, I think if they made this as a thing, you just hire a bunch of old famous wrestlers.
Yeah, I mean that seems like the easiest thing to do.
Yeah,
it's just the perfect roles, and that's I'm honestly surprised WWE hasn't gotten more into actually trying to make serious films for their network, but that's neither here nor there. So I mean, like, let's to wrap up.
man.
COVID craziness aside. How soon do you think people will get their hands on these books once you are fully funded and you're ready to go?
It depends on a couple things because of COVID. They say it's going to take 10 to 21 days to get the money from Kickstarter.
Gotcha.
Like for Kickstarter to round it all up and then
take their share and pay you.
Yeah. And I'm finished on the 20th. So, realistically, if I get the money by December 1st, that'd be great. Mm-hmm. Then immediately it goes to the printer. And then it's December, so it's just how much time the printer needs. Do they need 2 weeks? Do they need 3 weeks? Do they just take off for Christmas? I don't know what's going to happen. So we had originally put December because we thought, oh yeah, that's no problem. But then we were like, with COVID and Christmas and stuff, so we changed it to January.
Yeah, makes
so
sense.
Probably mid-January to late January, people would get the books.
Yeah, early first quarter next year.
I have a shipping company that we're hiring called Chit Chat that is actually going to make everything easy. So it's not me going out to mail them all in separate whatever. They actually put everything on a truck, go to the U.S. and ship it.
That's cool. All right.
Yeah. We budgeted for that, and we're like, that just makes a lot of sense.
I honestly think a lot of Kickstarters don't. So that already sounds like you're ahead of the game.
I think a lot of people do it themselves. Just go to the post office and mail out 600 orders.
They're like, we got about, we only planned on getting 600 books we have to bring. And then it's like, they bought 10,000. So we're working. This is my living room. We're packing everything into boxes. We're mailing it out every day.
It's just too much. I've done that. I've done that a lot in comics. When we were self-publishing stuff 10 years ago, 12 years ago, we were just doing it for fun. It's a lot. It's a ton of work. So the packaging up everything isn't too bad. It's the going over the border and all that. The border stuff is a pain in the butt. So I've hired a company to come in and do it. So and as soon as the money comes in, then people will actually get all the digital stuff. And if we hit 20,000, which looks pretty good at this point, we're at 17. It's the first week. If we hit 20,000, then we're going to be in really good shape.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
So anything else you want to tell anyone listening to you about Mother Trucker or
that's
alter
it.
ego where they can find you next?
Come follow us on Kickstarter and back us. Let's make this comic happen. Let's make a whole series. I'm going to go for 2 years and give you a whole bunch of this stuff. It's going to be really great.
Cool. All right. Andy, thank you for taking the time to talk to us. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you, man. That was awesome.
Yeah, I totally enjoyed this. So, everybody, check out Mother Trucker. Just search for it on Kickstarter.com, Mother Trucker, and donate if it sounds like your cup of tea. Later.
Cool. Thanks, man.
So that wraps up our interview with Andy Belanger from the Mother Trucker team, which you can find now again at Kickstarter.com. Just search Mother Trucker and you'll find an awesome comic book that you should definitely consider donating to if it feels like something you're interested in. I'm Andrew McDonald. This has been Kickstart a crowdfunding podcast. And you can always find more podcasts from myself and several others at RapturePress.com, where we have Totally Original Geek News Podcast, Mike and Mike Go to the Movies, The Complete Works, a Jeff Goldblum podcast, and much, much more. Talk to you guys soon.